So, here we go. This is a subject that I've been wanting to cover for a long time now, but I had to wait until I had managed to gather enough data to really go in depth, to go as deep as this particular topic deserves. Without further ado, let's jump right in. The reason I'm talking about this now is this: the modern left has for years now used fascist as a slur against those on the right, against whites, to be exact. Chances are, if you spend a year talking about real-life issues, at one point or another, you're going to become an enemy of the left, and therefore, a fascist. As twisted as their logic with this is, I'm going to tell you how and why they're wrong. Now, most of us who are familiar with history know how much stuff we're missing. We're missing authors, dates, and some events have been twisted time and time again to forward a certain political agenda. Yes, both left and the right have done this. It's no secret. But to me, what matters is the truth, and truth only. I read and write philosophy, so I have to stick with truth as my first and last resort, since nothing else guarantees me happiness. There's nothing else that could save us from the lingering destruction, if not the truth. Most historians throughout history have been on the left, politically. If not outright leftists, most of them have been sort of center-left with variations, and this is why you don't hear the following name very often: Giovanni Gentile. If you're familiar with him, kudos to you. I wouldn't have been, had I not gone outside the books that were presented to us at history classes. More of this man coming up later. The reason why the left is constantly attacking us is this: the measure of our progress is our ability to use reason and evidence as the basis of our societies, and historically, leftists have been the most anti-rational voice on earth. The left hasn't cared about facts in the past, so don't expect them to change their ways now. No, that'd be foolish. Marxism is violence. It was when it was put in action by the Soviet Union. It was when put into action with little variation by Benito Mussolini. It was just that in China, every time it has been tried, there's been mass starvation, war, authoritarian state that doesn't care about its people, only profit, and so on. You know the drill by now. Why do Marxists resort to violence? They resort to violence because they're anti-rational. When you can't reason with somebody, when you've tried to influence them with reason and evidence, and it doesn't work, what is left? Force. Marxists simply skipped the part of trying to reason with citizens and started to use force from day one. This rabid anti-intellectual violence has been pretty visible in the Kavanaugh mess that just came to a bitter close, bitter for the left, in the USA. Believe her. This is what they've been shouting. Even without any sort of evidence, they say we should believe the woman that accused Senator Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her back when they were in high school. She has absolutely nothing that proves her to be correct. They lost, but still, I just saw a video of these lunatic leftist protesters out on the streets, angry and shouting anti-rational things about rape culture, and how every woman should be believed, and all that. Absolutely no evidence whatsoever. You can open up any modern history book, and you'll read about the inventor of Marxism, Karl Marx. You'll read about the inventor of capitalism, Adam Smith. But you know who you won't read about? The inventor of fascism, Giovanni Gentile, 1875 to 1944. Gentile was an Italian neo-Hegelian idealist philosopher, who was the father of the philosophy of fascism. In his mind, there were two possible ways to lead a society. One he called the liberal democratic society, which in his opinion was too individualistic, which made it selfish, and therefore not plausible. The second one was what he rooted for, what he called true democracy, and he defined it like this: society, where individuals willingly subordinate themselves to the state. Isn't that just? That's terrifying. Giovanni's philosophical mentor was, who else than, Karl Marx, the creator of Marxism. Giovanni described his ideology of fascism as being basically the same than Marxism, but with national identity. The reason you haven't heard about him, and others probably haven't too, is precisely because most historians have been leftists. If it came out that the inventor of essentially communism was the philosophical mentor of a man who created the system of fascism, the ground under their arguments of how the right is pushing for fascism would simply break and disappear, and they'd realize who the actual fascists in history actually rooted for. Giovanni wanted to create a society which resembles the family, pushing forward this "we're all in this together" sort of mentality, which is very common among the modern left, of course. The idea of community and a society where everyone has each other's back sounds beautiful, don't get me wrong. But unicorns sound pretty too, and they don't exist either. In fact, I'd be willing to bet money on finding a unicorn before I find a historical remark of an actually successful communistic society. You know, without the mass murders and all that nasty stuff. Have you heard the slogan from the 2012 Democratic Party convention? Here goes. Government is the only thing we all belong to. Shit, it starts to feel cold reading that. Read it again. What does it remind you of, and better yet, who? It's definitely something that Giovanni Gentile would have liked, and it wouldn't surprise me if I actually came across a quote from him where he says this exact thing. We all belong to the government. There's nothing outside of the government. They tell us how to think, how to dress, what to eat, where to work, where to spend our salaries. They tell us the opinions we can choose from, so that we can think we've made our own. That's what communism was in action, that's what Mussolini's rule was in action, that's what communism and fascism are, in action. The left's mantras on how they care about the poor, or hate those who exploit the underclasses, they fall down flat when you look at what a truly leftist system of government can do to the working class, the people they seem to care about. They starve to death. They're beaten to death. They're sent to prison with false accusations. They're just. It's a mess. It's always a mess. It's a steaming pile of bodies that the rich investors are trying to cover up with their dollar bills, but no matter how much money they throw at it, the smell remains. Thankfully so, because if it wasn't for the smell, we'd be living that all over again, learning nothing from the mistakes we've made in the past. The political left has no values. In fact, value and virtue aren't on their to-do list, it's only power. It's the ultimate power over an individual, and nothing else matters. They care not about ethics. Ethics are just a disguise in which his shadow they can slip in their destructive seeds in forms of legislation and policy. The left has successfully, and dare I say, vastly, expanded the state's control over the private sector in the US, and many more places, with healthcare, banking, and all that. You know, who else did that? National Socialists in Germany? They were fascists. Now, if you disagree with me on anything I've said here, feel free to comment. I'd be more than happy to have a discussion about this hot topic. Support reason and evidence, reject fascism and modern liberalism. Thanks for reading, and as always, stay infidel. Finish infidel.